Incel, a term that you probably recognize if you've spent any amount of time on the internet in the past 10 years, and especially so if you've been on it in the past 3. And if you haven't heard it, or if you've heard the term and never really looked into it, then I'm here to explain this evolution of toxic incel culture, touch on a few enablers and major events that caused it to jump from a laughable subculture to a degenerate cesspool. This video is going to be relatively quick because everyone on YouTube already has brain rot from TikTok, and I want to state right here at the beginning, not all incels are bad people. In fact, most incels aren't even involved in what I'm going to be covering. I'll only be talking about the bad people who have caused harm or have helped form the toxic incel community, and with all that out of the way, we can begin. Incels, or involuntary celibates, are now a group of men, typically very young men, that believe themselves unable to attract women sexually, and a good portion of these incels use this self-hatred as an excuse to hate women and to villainize men they believe are better than them. Now, even though I said that you'd probably be aware of it if you've been on the internet in the past 10 years, it's a term that was originally coined in the mid-1990s by not a man, but a woman on a website that she made called Elena's Involuntary Celibate Project. She made this website because she was in her mid-20s and felt like she was a late bloomer in the dating world, and believed that this was a good place for discussion with others who struggled with relationships. This website was supposedly very positive and had originally shortened involuntary celibate to invicel, before shortening it again to incel. Now, the word had a different meaning at the time. It just meant someone of any gender who was lonely, never had copulated, and people who had never been in a relationship before, so how did it become something so negative and a word associated with some very vicious crimes? Now, disclaimer, do not harass anybody mentioned in this video. Not every incel is some evil, deplorable person, and those who are already facing jail time or have long since passed, so with that out of the way, we can talk about Friday, May 23rd, 2014. This day would mark Elliot Rodger, a 22-year-old man, becoming what many would call the king of incels. See, this was the day that he figured that he had suffered enough at the hands of humanity, or more specifically, women. So he went on a spree that would end the lives of 6 innocent people and injure many more.
New details emerging about the deadly rampage near a California college. 10 minutes of terror when 22-year-old suspect Elliot Rodger opened fire, triggering a deadly chase with police.
See, Elliot that night had stabbed 2 men that were his roommates and one random male friend of theirs who had come over that night. These people being Weihan Wong, Chen Wong, and George Chin. With no motive that I could find in my research other than him wanting to have his retribution, which is a concept we'll touch back on. It's believed that he did this when they each entered the place separately one by one, apparently even looking up how to perform a silent kill with a knife before they had come into the room. He brutally attacked them, and George Chin was left with 94 stab wounds. Evidence at the scene suggested he tried to clean up the blood to no avail, so he left and arrived at a coffee shop around 8 p.m., purchasing a coffee like nothing had happened. Later, he was seen sitting in his car working on his laptop, where he uploaded a video to YouTube at 9:17 p.m., titled Retribution, and then sending out his manifesto to 34 people at 9:18, named My Twisted World, The Story of Elliot Rodger, a piece that I'll explain in just a minute. He then went to a sorority house where he wasn't let in, so he attacked random people nearby, shooting and ending the life of 2 women and injuring 1. He then took off in his car in a drive-by shooting, hitting a man 7 times, tragically ending his life. Elliot continued along his spree, exchanging fire with police before crashing and taking his own life. The spree would end with 6 fatalities and 14 injured. The worst part was that when they searched the car, they found 3 pistols, multiple knives, and 548 rounds of unspent ammunition. Now, you may be wondering how he became the king of incels, since what I've described makes it seem just like a guy who snapped, but that's where the video from earlier comes in.
Tomorrow is the day of retribution. The day in which I will have my revenge against humanity.
Retribution, a video that can only be described as a hate essay for humanity, stating people never wanted him, even though he viewed himself as a high-value individual.
I don't know what you don't see in me. I'm the perfect guy.
He describes feeling dejected and says that he feels like taking his revenge on the world, saying things like it's been 8 years of torture and that he is a supreme male specimen. And just sitting through the video is tough, as it's incredibly obvious that Elliot Rodger was not mentally well. But this still really isn't enough to call him the king of incels. Yes, he makes some points about his hatred for women, but it's a manifesto that definitely makes him the king of incels. His manifesto is a grueling 137-page piece on his life, beliefs, feelings, and events that got him to this point. Now, I've read all this, and if you're up to the challenge, then there will be a link in the description. But I'm just going to touch on a few major points in his life that got him to this, as it is his autobiography. Age 7, his parents were getting a divorce, and here's where what could only be called a downward spiral begins. His family being separated led to Elliot having to go between houses, and we're introduced to a woman named Samaya, a person who would become Elliot's stepmother. He makes quick notes about rebelling against her, but then it's back to writing about his childhood, with joy until age 9. In the writing, Elliot states that him being shorter than everyone else in 4th grade was the start of his feelings of inferiority, something he states would only grow more volatile. He was often jealous of other children and would cry. He hated his stepmother and dreaded being at his father's house because of her, stating the weeks at his mom's house brought him great joy, and it's very obvious in the writing he at least cared about his mom. He did normal childhood things and described problems fitting in and being jealous, but nothing that different from other children in his age group. Around the time he was in middle school, he put female attention on a pedestal, at the time saying it felt better than high-fiving cool kids, and whenever he was treated poorly by a woman, he felt awful and smaller than a mouse. While this is kind of odd, it's not like you could say this is so out of the norm, especially since he was at a very important developmental part of his life, socially and emotionally, which would only be made worse by puberty. See, just prior to hitting puberty, Elliot ran into pornography, something that he says would traumatize him greatly at the time, and says finding out about sex was something that truly destroyed his life, and was the true beginning of his horrific downfall, as he calls it. At 13, he decided that he wanted to play the new World of Warcraft, and it became something he was deeply obsessed with. He would use it to avoid the harsh realities of the world, and even though he was being called weird now, the escapism he got from the game made all those insecurities disappear, at least when he was playing.
Hey guys, Jacob here. See, now that World of Warcraft has been mentioned, it's my turn to start talking. Elliot states that the only time he did care was when a popular group of 7th grade girls teased him, and he hated one especially, which made him start to hate all girls, believing they derived pleasure from his suffering. Now, I would love to summarize all 137 pages, but I think you can now start to understand the early parts of his life and the beginning of these feelings that he had. So, let's get closer to the end, towards the things he would describe as the final straws. Now, Elliot describes many similar experiences and talks about the fact that he developed a fear of women. Skipping to 2012, becoming extremely jealous of those richer than him or those who got more attention from women. He was full of hatred and delusions and would participate in the lottery, spending $1,600 altogether on lottery tickets, in the hope that he would win, believing he was destined for greatness. And this was obviously his opportunity. Failure, he obviously didn't win the lottery and get the jackpot. Here was where he chose that he would just not leave his room for a long time, believing he could manifest winning the lottery. When April came around, his best friend for all his life left him, sending him into a deeper spiral of depression. He called this the ultimate betrayal, and it was something that only made his bad situation worse. He was still obsessed with wealth and decided the lottery was the only way for him to become wealthy at a young age. He began to visualize winning because he read Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy, a book that he would become obsessed with. Soon, he started to act out against people physically. He saw some guys hanging out and playing kickball with women at a park. So, he decided to leave the park and buy a super soaker, fill it with orange juice, come back and shoot it at them. Something that he would face no repercussions for. At the age of 21, he failed to win the lottery again. So, he got so drunk that night, destroying his laptop by accident, he had to buy a new one. He convinced his mother to pay for one, and on that same day he went to the shooting range, and in his writing stated that he knew the day of retribution was coming in the back of his mind. He questioned what he was doing there and what led him to that point in his life. In the following days, he decided that there was no purpose to life, and that even though he was the ideal human specimen, humanity had shunned him, and thought to himself that if humanity wouldn't accept him, then he would destroy humanity. After more lottery failures, he went to train his body as a last-ditch effort to get laid. After he got himself into a shape he deemed good enough to be, he went to a party, and here was his final straw. He was ignored by some girls as they went to talk to other guys. He decided he was going to try and push off the ledge to the street, which he failed to do and ended up being pushed into the street himself, breaking his ankle. He went back trying to get his pair of Gucci sunglasses, only to get beat up, having to carry his bloody, broken body home. He would let his leg heal up, and then he would decide to go on his spree. Now, with a lot of context, you're probably still wondering why people idolize. And I honestly have no clue. He was mentally ill. The only thing that incels have in common with him is being an incel. Since Elliot Rodger, there have been many people who tried to imitate him. A few of these people, like Cole Carini, who blew off one of his hands and dealt severe damage to the other in an alleged attempt to blow up a group of cheerleaders. And you know what he did when he was caught? He stated that he was going to make a statement like Elliot Rodgers did. There's another one I want to mention, who is yet again stated to have been directly inspired by Rodgers himself, and was heavily involved in the Incel community, and a guy who did succeed in a copycat crime. Jake Davidson, a UK man who, like I said, heavily, and I mean heavily, involved in the Incel community. He had previously assaulted someone because they hurt his ego, posting a video in April 2021 stating, "This is why incels are prone to ending themselves and others." Which, this is not word for word, YouTube. Don't beat me up, but you get the gist. He references Rodgers in that video, and then the next month posts another video listing a bunch of negative traits about him, and then says he likes to imagine himself as the Terminator. This would be followed in the next month by him shooting and ending the life of 5 people, like Rodger did, turning the weapon on himself and ending his own life. It's obvious these communities warp people involved into misogynists that harm others as an act of revenge due to their own misfortune or feeling like the world has wronged them. The people who are heavily involved in these communities are dangerous, and I have found multiple articles calling them a new domestic terrorist threat. That is not a joke. A group of people that can't get laid hold misogynistic views that are considered a threat by not only the news, also in the Secret Service. That's how you know it's bad. It's not like Elliot Rodgers is the only party that influences these people. That's why we have to talk about enablers. The people who may not explicitly encourage these communities, but the ideas they hold or the way they portray their ideas to an audience can help facilitate the growth of toxic communities. Andrew Tate, a man who, yes, I am aware, has publicly denounced incels, stating that they're in the wrong, and you're the only person to blame if you're an incel. But that is something he said recently, and I say recent as in before, the prison time. He before this attributed being an incel to lacking melanin.
When's the last time you seen a black incel? Never. It's always little white boys sitting there going, I can't get laid. Because you're white, little white boy. You ain't got no melanin.
And I am aware, not everything he says is to be taken seriously. But are incels aware, or do they just need more excuses? See, it's been a long-standing point on the internet that Andrew Tate is supposedly a misogynist, and he would argue that he holds more traditional beliefs, but people with traditional beliefs don't allegedly force women to be cam girls. See, maybe Tate isn't exactly the villain people make him out to be, but I think the community he has garnered are definitely the villains they are made out to be. He's a guy who does talk about issues that are actual problems, and then he just gives the world's worst solutions. He uses women that he has dated as assets to explicit porn-addicted individuals, which are most likely incels. But I can't say with certainty that they all are. And he eggs on misogynists by confirming that he believes women are assets. I mean, he thinks women are less reliable, less trustworthy, and are less capable, which is all the stuff that a misogynistic group would eat up. I'm just going to share a bunch of clips because I don't think I need to explain the problem with these things.
Dying. Do you want a male pilot or a female pilot? If you're about to get on a plane and that plane's going to fly through a hurricane and there's a 50-50 chance of it crashing and dying. Do you want a male pilot or a female pilot?
Just a fucking good pilot I want.
That is such a politically correct answer, and it's a lie.
Is that?
We all know you'd want a man to fly that plane. You would not want some woman to walk up the stairs. Hi, guys. We're about to go into the hurricane. You'd be like, what? Whoa. Give me an old white-haired man. Everyone knows it. And I respect your very neutral view on the world. But I'll tell you, in my life experience, because this is how we view the world, right? We're all biased. No, we're all biased based on our experiences, right? I have seen so many women fail to park and crash cars and do dumb shit. I do not want a female pilot flying me through a hurricane. I've seen enough female driving of all vehicles to know that that shit is a bad idea, and I want a male pilot.
I'm looking forward to your response.
Sure. So I think my sister is her husband's property, yes.
How are women allowed to drive?
Yeah, some of this stuff makes it obvious what's being enabled here. Now that we've covered what I consider to be the biggest enabler, let's talk about the biggest communities that can enable these behaviors. The pilled community. On the soft side, have opinions that differ from the whole, and on the extreme, have opinions that are incredibly criminal. I'm sure you've heard about people online calling themselves red-pilled and others blue-pilled, which is inspired by the Matrix. But there is a lot more to this idea of pills than one would initially think. Red-pilled is a term that you're definitely familiar with, and is just people who have politically or opinion awakenings. And these people aren't bad, like what's coming up. But they share some questionable opinions. These people often believe their opinions are better, and that others who aren't like them are blue-pilled or blissfully ignorant to the world around them. Now, being red-pilled isn't something evil. Every guy in a boys' group chat where they shared Patrick Bateman and Ryan Gosling memes. But it's the pills that come after that are the problem. Black-pilled is a term used to describe the most extremist side of differing ideologies. Although not explicitly said by Rodgers himself, the black pill is the closest to Elliot Rodgers as of any of the pills get. Being black-pilled basically means that these people have given up on the world changing and have taken a nihilistic mindset. Black-pilled individuals typically encourage violence, but very, very few go out and actually commit any violent acts. The heavy emphasis on violence and nihilism means that this group is the most self-termination minded. Some black-pilled individuals believe the only way for things as they are to change is through violence, as they would call normies, have to acknowledge the issue. R-pilled or R-cell, something I won't be saying the full name of, for obvious reasons. These people believe that women are brainless beasts and believe that the R-word is necessary, as women wouldn't be able to make the decision themselves. R-cells believe it's about something on the primal level, but it's the most out-of-touch criminal stuff that they're just trying to justify. R-cells heavily believe 80-20 rule, or the idea that 80% of women are only attracted to 20% of men, so they feel that they aren't in the 20% and prefer the idea of force over the idea of consent.
These pilled communities are something that psychologists have been looking into for as long as they've been aware of them, and realistically, this incel idea is mostly a mental health crisis. The ideas that these communities have shared have led to the evolution of toxic incel culture. Thank you if you made it this far. I'm just the Fear and Hunger guy, and I only really wanted to cover this because of a tweet I saw on Twitter. Here's the tweet. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, the whole thing. Every YouTuber tells you to do it. Got more videos on the work, and I'll try and keep them consistent. Goodbye.